Miserable. Those miserable old shits didn't want you to be human. Horn. It must have felt good sticking a knife in that horn fucker. Authority. My dear, you have been stripped of your dignity and authority. Plate. And your gold-plated thugs just gave them their rallying cry. Needle. What we ended up having to do was hook the needle. Nature. It appears my trusting nature got the better of me. Tie. They tied you to the mast to keep you from jumping overboard. Detail. I love the detail that you've managed to get in these corners. Rival. Because he understood the necessity of working with one's rivals. Fond. I've become quite fond of Lady Sansa during our travels together. Assassin. If you ride to Darkest Ashay, his assassins will follow you. Absence. But Lord Belish's absence would present certain problems. Spirit. He has more spirit than his father, I'll give him that. Air. But an attack from the air with dragon fire. Disobey. I remember when you disobeyed orders and rode south to help Rob. Destiny. How could she not believe in destiny? Vile. He hasn't told you about the vile things they do with their bodies? Ashore. Now, since it's my last night ashore for a long while. Interrupt. I'm sorry, I shouldn't interrupt you. Necklace. Do you remember that lovely necklace Dantas gave you? Thirsty. Listening to talkers makes me thirsty. Health. The prince's health forces him to remain at Sunspear. Funeral. I want the funeral feast to be the biggest the kingdoms ever saw. Poppy. Maester Pycelle was giving him milk of the poppy. Stubborn. Stubborn little wildling bitch, aren't you? Unarmed. You are unarmed and unguarded because you know me better than that. Ha. Ha, that strikes fear in the heart. Hunter. You failed, but I'm a better hunter than you. Helmet. When he took off his helmet and they saw that silver hair. Heel. There where I had healed men and women beyond counting. Somebody. Why would I want somebody with your history of failure guarding Lady Sansa? Whip. What would you have me do? Whip her through the streets. Sink. We need to find Euron Greyjoy's fleet and sink it. Collapse. I think about her beautiful little face starting to collapse. Passage. The Boltons will give you safe passage to the stony shore. Discipline. Perhaps you need more scribing work to discipline your mind. Oyster. Nothing better for your coxswain than fresh oysters. Barrel. First builder, we'll need 100 barrels of pitch brought it up the wall. Mutton. Like you're a nice juicy mutton chop. Bolt. I killed my father Tywin Lannister with a bolt to the heart. Lust. He does have a deep, abiding lust for her money. Shot. And every shot I had to go up there and get my one arrow. Task. They set me to the task of preserving that man's window counting. Reckon. Now, I reckoned you'd die a dozen more times over the next few days. General. Maybe a few of her top generals get picked off one by one. Doc. You said you didn't know what I would see at the docks. Legendary. Your discretion is legendary, where your friends are concerned. Lemon. Shall we have some lemon cakes? Gratitude. The gratitude of the people of Westeros for helping to end this war. Acquire. A lovely thing I once acquired from a Lizine pleasure house. Property. You walk as though the paving stones were your personal property. Suspect. I suspect he's the main reason you weren't slaughtered in your crib. Effort. That Daenerys Stormborn made every effort to avoid bloodshed. Pair. Her brothers gave her a pair of wolf pelts for her wedding. Token. The triangular tokens count for Sir Alliser Thorne. Statement. It's a sad fucking statement if Dolorous Ed is our only chance. Human. Told them human beings weren't even property to begin with. Imprison. And you let a band of fanatics imprison your brother by law. Cheese. I thought you were caught stealing a wheel of cheese. Breakfast. Lord Varys knows what you had for breakfast 3 days ago. Star. They make love under the stars for the whole Calazar to see. Corner. I love the detail that you've managed to get in these corners. Doom. All who travel too close to the doom must have protection. Truce. In return the king in the north will extend this truce. Kidnap. If you hadn't kidnapped me in the first place. Slut. She's a dumb slut, really, but a lid for every pot. Wield. I'll wager you still can't sit a horse or wield a sword. Fold. The adoration of the king for bringing the veil back into the fold. Crucify. And what of the slave children these noble Myronese crucified? Cart. Turn this cart around and get the hell out of here. Jump. When we were 7 and you jumped off the cliffs at Casterly Rock. Yesterday. And I have fewer enemies today than I did yesterday. Succeed. Because if Myrene succeeds, a city without slavery. Paint. Do you know who had this table carved and painted? Sir Davos? Itself. Not so long ago, this city was ready to devour itself. Accompany. I am glad your new friend was able to accompany you to the capital. Judgment. Prince Tristane must learn judgment if he is to rule one day. Potato. Noble ladies sell their diamonds for a sack of potatoes. Proclaim. And proclaim me the true Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North. Comfort. It often comforts me to think that even in war's darkest days, theirs. So your reasons are true and theirs are false? Roll. The bars of those gates are 4 inches of cold rolled steel. Sadly. And sadly so many of us get to try so little. Grandmother. With her and our grandmother the Lady Olenna in the gardens. Consent. Apparently they had married without my knowledge or consent. Sapphire. And that makes me happier than all her sapphires. Officer. We could use an officer with knowledge of the city's defenses. Flow. The blood of the first men flows through my veins. Scrub. And their glory than the charwomen scrubbing their floors. Smoke. She taught me how to make healing smokes and ointments. Maintain. Are the stewards responsible for maintaining the tunnel? Market. The Carthene night market is like no night market you've ever seen. Stuff. There's a chest of the good stuff left back at your house. Natural. And you're quite certain he died of a natural illness? Steady. Some of 'em's just poor lads looking for steady feed. Lurk. Well, I just wouldn't feel safe with you lurking about. Capable. Sir Davos is perfectly capable of waving a torch on his own. Seduce. I'd have a better chance of seducing his horse. Nicely. Just when his life seemed to be going so nicely. Exciting. I thought you'd have something more exciting planned. Healthy. The masters will buy the healthy ones and for a good price. Bull. If the bull had fangs and claws, I would. Nobleman. She crucified hundreds of noblemen in Slaver's Bay. Slowly. We built it slowly over the years. Hot. Calling us animals as we dragged her son from their hut. Swim. She was swimming with 2 of my girls in the water gardens. Friendship. Just because I pay you for your services doesn't diminish our friendship. Pet. So you bring her here with her pet northerner. Quarter. You too. Take Lord Lannister's things to his quarters. Crowd. Crowded. You'd think we were serving venison stew. Rope. I sent men over the walls with grappling claws and ropes. Suck. Figured I wouldn't have to suck up to any highborn cunts here. Rough. Gentlemen, rough men, ugly men, pretty men. Presume. I wouldn't presume to know your thoughts on the matter. Circumstance. Even confessing feels good under the right circumstances. Adventure. You and me, we're gonna have some adventures. Suitable. I trust you find your chamber suitable, my lady. Gain. If someone is planning on making our losses their gains. Slay. Oberyn was slain during a trial by combat by a lord. Sunrise. We've been walking since before sunrise. Hateful. You'll be glad of the hateful things I do someday when you're queen. Ginger. Well, you've been thinking about that, Ginger Minge? Gladly. Sir Loras Tyrell. I will gladly wed your sweet sister. Hire. He's hired thousands of foreign sellswords to bolster his army. Buy. Goodbye Lord Royce, and thank you for all you've done for me. Attempt. If the Lannisters were behind the attempt on the Stark boys' life, pen, herding the masters into pens and slaughtering them by the thousands. Sow. That's alright, there gave birth to a litter of 8. Dishonor. You will dishonor yourself forever if you do this. Shelter. To feed all former slaves and barracks to shelter them. Formal. You don't need to make formal alliances with people you trust. Jaw. When they feel the jaws beginning to shut, they'll sue for peace. Filth. Wait your turn, you piece of fucking filth. Bravery. If it weren't for your squire's bravery, you'd be a dead man. Shout. The second says, no, but I can shout for help in 19 languages. Underestimate. If I have underestimated our enemies? Stomach. You don't have the stomach for it, scurry back into hiding. Bag. I'm going to give Bronn the largest bag of gold anyone's ever seen. Recently, until quite recently, I was one of the richest men in the world. Blast. One blast is for rangers returning. Port. I use them, you see, to bring spices from one port to another. Brilliant. A brilliant stylist who invented half the stories he tells. Innocence. And profess your guilt or innocence before the 7? Decree. I have here a decree from my father Tywin Lannister. Misery. Your dragons will bring the world nothing but death and misery, my dear. Failure. Why would I want somebody with your history of failure guarding Lady Sansa? Beggar. The bare-headed beggar, the king with his crown? Rum. And cum and garlic and rum. Injustice. Sometimes it is better to answer injustice with mercy. Grown. Daenerys Targaryen has 3 full-grown dragons. Lifetime. I didn't think we'd find another king in my lifetime. Cub. Surely one of our men needs your attention more than this cub. Mud. And if Stannis does attack the Mud Gate, what do we have? Shortly. I married her Aunt Lisa shortly before my beloved's untimely death. Devoted. She's always been very devoted to the poor and the unfortunate. Shape. Blood spells. Curses. Shape-shifting. What do you think? Importance. Someone of importance to show these bankers our respect. Toast. Well, how does he expect me to toast without wine? Bargain. Until he fulfills his end of the bargain and I have my crown. Prison. The queen is in prison and there is nothing I can do. Afterwards. Continue to listen to them long afterwards. Pursue. But here in Meereen I cannot pursue my talents. Handle. The blade is Valyrian steel. The handle dragonbone. Consequence. Which means she does not intend to suffer those consequences. Tyrant. Who will never again be held hostage by a tyrant. League. All the other wildlings for 100 leagues have disappeared. Bowl. When you get to Flea Bottom, have a bowl of brown for me. Temple. And the temple holds its form for 1,000 years or more. Sparrow. End up with a string of dead sparrow heads around my neck. Honored. And as a parting gift to our honored guests. Movement. I couldn't really discuss troop movements with you. Custom. Westerosi customs are still a bit foreign to me. Particularly. And aside from your here, none of you are particularly funny. Atone. Queen Marjorie has already atoned for her sins. Babe. Every wildling man, woman, and babe living under your protection. Breast. Swaddled them, rocked them, fed them at her own breast. Besides. To merit a featherbed besides Littlefinger? Recruit. I want to hear how a Night's Watch recruit became king in the north. Heel. You'll bring that boy king to heel. And his mother, too, if needs be. Dignity. My dear, you have been stripped of your dignity and authority. Fierce. And she was fierce when it came to protecting her children. Reply. And for the first time in my life the Lord replied. Executioner. That long walk to the executioner's block. Borrow. And he was famished. So he borrowed a ham. Grandchild. This is a homecoming I'll tell my grandchildren about. Collect. I sent you there to collect taxes, not bodies. Pyramid. If we go to the beach, the masters will take the pyramid. Soup. And I fed them soup and I made sure I was seen doing it. Ignore. And I have seen you ignore your counselors. Deserter. They've captured a deserter from the Night's Watch. Grim. And I'll make sure you don't look so fucking grim all the time. Reconsider. Which is why I am begging you to reconsider this battle. Glass. They said what's left of him could fit in a wine glass. Music. The only music the Northerners know is the howling of wolves. Overthrow. Have overthrown House Martell and taken control of Dorne. Pocket. Anyone with a few coppers in his pocket can own you for the night. Sympathy. But then perhaps his own unnatural urges will give him sympathy for yours. Prevent. The kind that prevents your people from being even more so. Singe. They'll be singing about us for 1,000 years. Forest. Is that the children of the forest used to hunt with dragonglas? Incest. And we're surprised when the fruit of their incest is rotten? Mutineer. I'm going to capture the mutineers holed up there or kill them. Thrill. The queen will be thrilled to know you're bringing her daughter home. Distraction. My grandfather's funeral is not a distraction. Humiliate. Being repeatedly humiliated by Robb Stark is time-consuming. Yellow. He has yellow teeth, that's enough. Tala. Rid. I killed my husband because it felt good to be rid of him. Condemn. I'd condemned this poor, innocent child to a horrible death. Cheer. When Rhaegar won, everyone cheered for their prince. Further. May our journey continue without further incident. Unfortunate. She's always been very devoted to the poor and the unfortunate. Mess. What? He don't like people messing with his daughters. Shock. It felt good to imagine their shock and their pain. Succession. You served my family well in the matter of the succession. Desert. I will pardon you for deserting the Night's Watch. Whichever. The old houses will flock to whichever side they think will win. Wrap. And you're wrapped up in them and they're wrapped up in you. Snake. Are you men or snakes? That you would threaten a child? Copper. Anyone with a few coppers in his pocket can own you for the night. Accent. Don't want everyone in Dorne to hear your accent. Spill. They've spilled more blood than the rest of us combined. Pillar. Are the twin pillars upon which the world rests. Permit. In the meantime, you are permitted to use the library. Slit. As soon as you get on his ships they're gonna slit your throats. Option. But whoremongering is still an option for you. Beginning. But in the beginning when it was home to Balerion the Dread. Gambler. We are not gamblers here at the Iron Bank. Lord Tyrell. Afternoon. Can enjoy their summer afternoons in peace and comfort. Cabin. Build yourself a cabin and find a woman to lie with in the night. Ensure. Ensuring their loyalty and their army should we need it. Shoe. But I found that the more work I put into my shoes. Sick. The women, the children, the old, the sick. Tend. You tend not to be overly concerned with the kind of distinction. Doll. When you are dancing in the meadow with your dolls and kittens. Key. By trying to steal the key to the north out from under me. Imp. The kind who serves his king. Imp bore. Tell me my future or I'll have your two boring eyes gouged out of your head. Choke. She won't talk so much when she's choking on my cock. Pigeon. When people find out I can't slay a pigeon. Spite. I don't know if her doubt is real or simply meant to spite me. Crack. Stretched you till your bones started to crack? Bid. Tyrion will do as he's bid and you will marry Sir Loras. Hereby. Do hereby recuse myself from this trial. Clan. It is said that the men of the mountain clans are great warriors. String. End up with a string of dead sparrow heads around my neck. Sausage. Stuffing their faces with ham and blood sausage. Height. What happens to bodies when they hit the rocks from such a height? Gutter. When I was a child I lived in alleys, gutters, abandoned houses. Testimony. When the testimonies concluded and a guilty verdict rendered. Mob. instead of a mob of peasants who've never held pikes in their lives. Fully. It'll be years before they are fully grown. Dirty. Getting your boots dirty, and doing what needs to be done. Responsibility. Is one of your responsibilities as Lord of Winterfell. Dove. I was wondering where our little Dove had flown. Criminal. I ask that you protect our faith by arresting these criminals. Torch. Sir Davos is perfectly capable of waving a torch on his own. Cheat. He feels he's being cheated. Persuade. Let me try to persuade the Blackfish to give up the castle. Politic. I've sworn to stay clear of the politics of the Seven Kingdoms. Challenge. I have no doubt you will prove equal to this challenge. Occasion. Why, Your Grace. In the past, on several occasions. Grieve. It grieves me you've less honor than a back alley whore. Happiness. Let's see for my family's health and happiness. Vouch. When smugglers must vouch for the honor of kings. Restore. I'm sure your new queen will be happy to restore yours. Unlikely. You can see why these numbers seem unlikely to add up. Map. Just point out the next map shop you see and I'll buy you one. Shy. Jaime Lannister's half an inch shy of an inch. Livestock. You two will ride in the rear guard and protect the livestock. Brotherhood. Your Grace. The King's Guard is a sworn brotherhood. Untie. Untie these ropes and we'll find out. Charming. Would your charming companion be so kind as to kneel? Keeper. You have a reputation as a moneylender and a brothel keeper. Familiar. I'm sure you're familiar with the King's Guard vows. Couple. We should have had a couple of boys like you along, shouldn't we? Chase. A dog doesn't need courage to chase off rats. Dusk. You have until dusk to collect your things. Stern. About time we had some stern northern leadership. Warning. Put their heads on spikes outside the stables as a warning. Reasonable. So do you have anything reasonable to ask? Thin. The thin man pays his family a lot of money. Kidney. Do you remember those kidney pies old Nan used to make? Powerless. A land where the powerful do not prey on the powerless. Beheading. Only I don't need a servant to do my beheading for me. Timid. A little timid but a sharp mind. Urgent. Something so urgent I couldn't trust the words to a raven. Brush. Scrub the floor. Empty my chamber pot. Brush my hair. Wheat. We have enough wheat for a 5-year winter. Monarch. A monarch who can intimidate the high lords and inspire the people. Prospect. Already out looking for a leader with better prospects. Source. Too many similarities from unconnected sources. Disgrace. A sellsword from the fighting pits. A disgraced knight. Harbor. Every time you leave harbor, you're leaving on a promise. Slice. Serve him up a nice juicy slice of ginger minge. Issue. To help deal with several troublesome issues. Art. They train little girls in the art of pleasuring old men. Abuse. It's well past time we addressed the abuses I endured. Sour. You said that King's Landing smelled of horse dung and sour milk. Navy. And we have taken the Myronese Navy, Your Grace. Actual. Has your experience ever involved any actual fighting? Purse. Are more valuable than the contents of his purse. Ease. To ease his pain, but he is completely insensate. Drinking. He thought drinking wildfire would turn him into a dragon. Stare. The following morning Luther never made it down the stairs. Contemplate. To any slave who contemplates doing whatever these slaves did. Confuse. Sometimes do you talk fancy on purpose to confuse me? Actress. She'll have a hard time finding work as an actress. Stretch. Stretched you till your bones started to crack? Spell. And all who study these mysteries try their hand at spells. Ruling. And a man who thinks that winning and ruling are the same thing. Beer. And a mug of dark beer to wash it down. Fortress. One of those abandoned fortresses will give us a way through. Target. Then maybe you'd hit your target one time in 10. Stain. The whole shit-stained world could drink off that one. Eager. At the hands of those you seem so eager to protect. Frightened. And dragging frightened children from their beds. Bottom. Peacetime or not getting your hands on a good bottom round steak. Inn. Stay here. I'll go back to the inn and bring help. Harvest. No, but motivating reluctant farmers to hand over their harvest. Crop. When House Tyrell stops sending our crops to the capital. Chest. Anyone with a chest full of gold can buy an army of unsullied. Range. Took a ranging party north and never made it back. Shake. But I can see his arms beginning to shake. Create. And if we don't provide them, they'll create their own. Triumph. And in my experience, large men do triumph. Discover. Soon as someone discovers I can't fight, he'll tell everyone. Loudly. And loudly about how difficult it was to control them. Shop. And my mother, my brother, and I lived with him above our shop? Nasty. Sorry you had to squire for such a nasty person. Foreigner. I'm afraid foreigners aren't welcome at such exclusive affairs. Directly. I promised you I would look you in the eye and speak directly. Reopen. If he really believes I'm going to reopen the fighting pits. Engage. And you're now engaged in a conflict on several fronts. Solid. You'll be cut to pieces before he sets foot on solid ground. Content. The contents of this room could lay King's Landing low. Include. And that's including stewards and builders. Twin. That's Jaime Lannister, the Queen's twin brother. Doorstep. I saw my brother stabbed through the heart right on our doorstep. Fishing. You'll take a ship to raid the fishing villages on the stony shore. Grip. My brother promised me he'd keep a grip on the Lannister forces. Corruption. Choking on violence. Corruption. And deceit. Weather. We're not in the Seven Kingdoms and you're not dressed for this weather. Board. They need to know the ships they are boarding. Undermine. In front of the other lords and ladies you undermine me. Temper. And you've been known to lose your temper from time to time. Useless. The name suits our purposes far more than that useless pile of rubble. Nail. How many children did the great masters nail to mileposts? Leather. I don't know how you stand it in all that leather. Riddle. No riddles. No stories. Tell me, what do you want? Prepared. We are more prepared for a siege than they could ever be. Tempting. Asking me to judge at your son's trial isn't quite as tempting. Bathe. Then why bathe him and dress him in fine clothes? Expert. Forgive me, your grace, I never claimed to be an expert in military matters. Hack. Well, life's been good since you hacked them off, your grace. Elsewhere. You wanted to be elsewhere, but how would you get there? Bran. Bran needs to find the raven beyond the wall. Shirt. The first mate brings the red shirt and the captain puts it on. Investment. But I cannot make an investment based on wishes and dreams. Stake. But I would stake my life. The Lannisters are involved. Influence. But influence is largely a matter of patience, I have found. Suited. I could think of no organization less suited to my talents. Pale. Hunting with their packs of pale spiders big as hounds. Muscle. To stop my dagger from going where their muscles weren't. Urge. But then perhaps his own unnatural urges will give him sympathy for yours. Sorcerer. If not for your mutilation at the hand of a second-rate sorcerer. Cliff. When we were 7 and you jumped off the cliffs at Casterly Rock. Lure. But you need to lure all the noble houses to the table? Homeland. You could have returned to your homeland with a fleet of ships. Cage. If John was here, why would they put his wolf in a cage? Scent. He smelled the scent on the summer air. Garrison. The mountain was garrisoned across the river from it. Condolence. The Iron Bank didn't send you here to offer condolences. Congratulation. The spider sent his greetings and his congratulations. Loose. I know you cut me loose on the wall. Stronghold. Deepwood Motte was our last stronghold on the mainland. Plead. Sansa came to court this morning to plead for your life. Trip. Did you trip into the fire when you were a baby? Rude. There's no need to be rude. Awake. I hated the idea of him lying awake in the dark afraid. Reek. Don't you reek? Essence. Grand Maester, perhaps some essence of nightshade to help him sleep. Armada. Lord Davos. We have an armada to rebuild and ports to repair. Apprentice. What does a dyer's apprentice know about battles anyway? Torment. You'd think being tormented from birth. Behavior. To come to a deeper understanding of their behavior. Palace. You weren't made to sit on a chair in a palace. Audience. Histor is here waiting in the audience chamber. Perspective. Yes. From your perspective, this is a problem. Relief. It's such a relief to hear you say so, Your Grace. Perfectly. Sir Davos is perfectly capable of waving a torch on his own. Reside. Men decide where power resides, whether or not they know it. Copy. Send copies of that letter to every corner of the realm. Being. Her concern with the well-being of the common people is interesting. Regent. The Queen Regent has a great many responsibilities. Alike. When we were young, Jaime and I, we looked so much alike. Speech. Is that another figure of speech? Hospitality. Magister Illyrio has extended his hospitality. Confidence. That I might be the one who deserves your confidence. Prick. Queen of Thorns give you one last prick in the balls. Significant. Last words are usually as significant as first words. Uncomfortable. I know from personal experience how uncomfortable the journey can be. Wisely. You've chosen your opponents wisely then. Mostly. I say we. It's my friend John Mostly. Coat. My dagger was coated with a special ointment from Ashay. Bloodshed. That Daenerys Stormborn made every effort to avoid bloodshed. Survivor. She'll have more than enough to destroy the survivors. Darling. Soon. Darling. When the war is over. Obviously. It was before I learned how to read. Obviously. Vanguard. So you'll be outside the gates fighting in the vanguard? Crew. My crew would wait on deck for a year if I asked them to. Suitor. The Lord of Harrenhal will make a worthy suitor for the widow Arryn. Spoil. Your Grace. Too much pain will spoil the pleasure. Quality. What is a good king's single most important quality? Earth. You serve nothing and no one by following him into the earth. Men, women and children will die by the thousands if we do nothing. Meaning. Should I explain to you the meaning of a closed door? Larder. So you admit you've got a hidden larder then? Mood. Why are you always in such a foul mood? Terrify. This is the only thing I've ever seen that terrifies me. Scorpion. The scorpions have all been destroyed, Your Grace. Elephant. I was told the Golden Company had elephants. Sailor. Nothing prettier than watching sailors burn alive. Invent. A brilliant stylist who invented half the stories he tells. Seed. I'll plant the seed as soon as Joffrey and I are married. Saying. A common saying, but not their official motto. Sledge. A crippled boy being pulled on a sledge by a simpleton? Add. You can see why these numbers seem unlikely to add up. Imagination. Don't you want to leave something to the imagination? Fever. I need fennel root for those with fever. Willow bark. Lookout. And to do that, we need to get rid of those lookouts. Legend. I was a fucking legend in Gin Alley. Scatter. And scatter them to the winds before they can march on the wall. Wit. She did not fight her brother's battle. You have wit. Relationship. You have a good working relationship with the Tyrells. Ambition. If serving as a glorified bodyguard is the sum of your ambition. Shave. Bring him a shaved goat and a bottle of olive oil. Blonde. Every time I close my eyes I see their blonde hair. Possess. You're blessed with abilities that few men possess. Substance. The substance burns so hot, it melts flesh like tallow. Recent. and his recent experience has made him wary of long engagements. Scheme. Aren't you always so clever with your schemes and your plots? Devise. Maybe you should devise our next battle plan while you're about it. Stonemason. Can't say I've ever met a literate stonemason. Successful. I forbade it because it is dangerous and rarely successful. Birthright. Not because of his birthright. Crate. Peter had 3 crates brought all the way from King's Landing. Account. I preferred working with the little brother on that account. Season. Your Grace, today is the traditional start of the fighting season. Renounce. After my father made me renounce my title and inheritance. Negotiation. And that is exactly why Grey Worm took part in these negotiations. Agreement. I thought you and I were on the verge of agreement before. Appropriate. Clearly, it would not be appropriate for a woman to assume that role. Massacre. Half of whom want to massacre the other half for one insult or another? Wicked. Does death only come for the wicked and leave the decent behind? Coast. You want the Second Sons to attack from the west coast? Ripe. All I've ever done is live to a ripe old age. Superior. The dressmakers in Highgarden will be far superior. Contribute. If they haven't contributed the right amount of grain to the stores. Equal. The notion that we are all equal in the eyes of the 7. Howl. At night you can hear the wind howling through the gaps. Foe. He's sworn to treat all wounded men friend or foe. Flag. I wouldn't let you wave your blunders around like a victory flag. Parent. You had Aunt Lisa send a letter to our parents. Dust. And all my life I've been knocking men like you into the dust. Nurse. And all the other monsters your wet nurse warned you about. Worthless. Varus. Littlefinger. My brother. Worthless. Bruise. She always comes back with scrapes and bruises. Dine. Bringing that to my table and making me dine with it? Claws. You will dig your claws in and you'll fight over him. Alley. When I was a child I lived in Alley's gutters, abandoned houses. Damned. If he's so damned important, how come they sent you to meet him? Heed. And heeds their advice until he comes of age. Honey. At supper time she would go straight for honey cakes. Brain. From balls to brains and see what Starks are made of? Merely. You think one ought to speak kindly of a traitor merely because. Accident. The destruction of the September of Baelor was a tragic accident. Bond. And in order to forge a lasting bond with the Myronese people. Stupidity. And my grandfather's stupidity in the field of battle. Bald. And not one of your bald friends is fast enough to stop me. Suggestion. The mere suggestion that the Queen's brother. Strife. To create strife between my sister and me. Overcome. And the fortress they built here has never been overcome. Immediate. Our immediate attention. I don't care about appointments. Appointment. In honor of Lord Stark's appointment as Hand of the King. Mutilate. But we do not mutilate little girls for vengeance. Treachery. Thanks to your treachery he was imprisoned. Haired. I lost my first boy. A little black-haired beauty. Traditionally. Doesn't the Lord Commander of the King's Guard traditionally cower? And we just cower in here while they slaughter our brothers. Hidden passageways built so the lords of Winterfell could escape. Sniff. Closer we can get without the dog sniffing us the better. Gathering. And you will represent my interests at this gathering as you see them. Split. And you won't have to split it 3 ways. Devotion. Only it's easy for you to preach utter devotion to family. Blink. No one would have blinked an eye at you. Unlike us, they were wise enough to burn them. Sufficient. 3 of you ought to be sufficient to make Lady Piggy squeal. Area. If I could have access to the restricted area of the library. Ashamed. Isn't he ashamed? Your brother. Disagree. Speaking for the grotesques. I'd have to disagree.